On this week's edition of District Directions, there's a whole lot of education going on. Mrs. Connie Blaney with District Update will be discussing educational promotions, plus her usual rundown of the last week's Board of Education meeting. Mrs. Linda Kramer is opening her class's minds to constitutions and the fundamentals of democracy on opening doors. Mrs. Judy Barber is exploring the world of homeschooling on Focus on Learning, and Mr. Rex Suba is discussing all the details of National Education Week. Stay tuned. Welcome back to another edition of District Directions. I'm your host, Amanda Patterson, taking on full-time responsibilities for the absent Lawrence Bothwell. There certainly is a whole lot of learning going on. Even J.C. Penney is getting in on all the fun. Here's Mrs. Connie Blaney with the details.
Good evening. The Cleveland County Health Department began immunizations of hepatitis B shots in the middle schools to all 6th graders last week. The immunizations were free, and the series of shots were given to the students by public health nurses at each of the school sites. The second series will be in December, and the third series of shots will be scheduled for March. All 6th graders will need to show proof of having completed the hepatitis B series upon enrollment in the 7th grade in the fall of 1997. If you have any questions, contact Joyce Lane, RN, at the Cleveland County Health Department at 321-4048. Congratulations to Norman educator Linda Atkinson, who was honored by fellow colleagues at the 48th Annual Convention of the Oklahoma Science Teachers Association. Linda, who serves as Science Curriculum Director for Norman Schools, was the recipient of the 1996 Distinguished Science Educator Award for the state of Oklahoma. Linda has been the Science Director for the district since 1982. The Citizens Advisory Council will sponsor its second series of public hearings this week and the final hearings to discuss the transfer policy. The Board of Education has charged the 47-member board to study the transfer policy this school year and to make recommendations to the Board of Education by January of 1997. The purpose of the hearings is to get input from the parents and the students about their thoughts on this subject. A public hearing will be held on November 12th at Whittier Middle School and on November 14th at Irving, West Mid-High, and Central Mid-High. We encourage parents to mark their calendars and to plan to attend one of these hearings. The hearings will be the same at each of these school sites. The 10th Annual All-City 5th Grade Choral Concert will be presented at the Lloyd Noble Center on Tuesday, November 12th at 7:30 p.m. The public is invited to attend. You can buy a ticket at the door. Adult admission will be $1. For students, it will be 50 cents, and for preschool students, admission is free. J.C. Penney is offering a special night to all schools to help schools raise money for special projects. Every patron who buys a $5 ticket gets in the door of J.C. Penney's and receives a discount of 25% plus the $5 discount coupon. The Charity Night Project Education is set for November 14th from 6 to 10 p.m. in the evening. Schools are selling the tickets and get extra credit and prizes for increased attendance at the J.C. Penney store in Center Fashion Mall. Norman schools will join schools from across the nation in observing American Education Week, November 17th through 23rd. The theme is "The Future Begins in Today's Schools." A proclamation was signed by the Norman Board of Education at the last school board meeting acknowledging Norman's participation in this week. Each school principal received a copy of the proclamation and will hang it in his or her school. Several activities are planned at the school sites. There are many co-sponsors of this week. Among them are the National Education Association, National PTA, American Association of School Administrators, and the National School Public Relations Association. We ask everyone to take advantage of this special week and show your support for your local schools. Next Monday, November 18th, the Norman Board of Education will hold its regular monthly meeting at 7 p.m. in the Administrative Services Center, 131 South Flood. The public is invited to attend. For Norman Public Schools, I'm Connie Blaney.
Thank you, Ms. Blaney. And remember, the All-City 5th grade choral concert is November 12th. For National Education Week, Norman's Teacher of the Year, Linda Kramer, is teaching the art of government to her class through the always entertaining novel Animal Farm, which is followed by hands-on activities in the classroom. Here's Norman's Teacher of the Year, Mrs. Linda Kramer, with the details.
An educational toy farm setup. Not an unusual sight in Norman schools, but this one's different. This one's in the team classroom at Central Mid High, and the students are 14 and 15 years old. Teaching George Orwell's Animal Farm is one of my favorite units because we get to learn all about a classic fable while learning how it relates to our system of government. Just imagine being in a classroom and learning that some people are like sheep, easily led, swallow anything you teach them, and just repeat what they're told. Sound familiar? Lots of other people are like Boxer the horse, hard-working, does his share, but just can't think things through very well, and so he's easily led too. Who are the people who take advantage of these poor other animals? Well, we have Napoleon, the boar, who abuses his power. We have Snowball, the opposition party. And then we have Squealer, who propagandizes in order to get his point across. Students have been learning how to relate the truths in Animal Farm to the election that we've just been having and to other things as well, such as commercials on television. Animal Farm is a great unit to teach students the value of literature and how it relates to their real lives. Students produce things like the 7 commandments for getting along in a social group. After studying the Declaration of Independence, they write an Animal's Declaration of Independence. And finally, modeled after our own Constitution, they produce the Animal Farm Constitution, complete with articles and amendments. Students enjoy learning all about Animal Farm, but I think the most important lesson they learn is that maybe we are all created equal, but if we're not careful, some are created more equal than others. I'm Linda Kramer, and I'll see you next week when we open another door.
Thank you, Mrs. Kramer. Since National Education Week is near, Mrs. Judy Barber focuses on homeschooling with an expert who teaches parents how to teach their children effectively at home. Here's Mrs. Judy Barber with Focus on Learning.
Welcome to Focus on Learning. A baby is born and the responsibilities begin. Parents begin to look at all the many, many, many responsibilities that they have for their child or children. And one of those responsibilities is education. Many parents choose public education. Some choose private, and some choose homeschooling. Our guest today is Joy Brooklyn, and she's a consultant for parents who are interested in homeschooling. Joy, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I think that homeschooling is something that if someone is doing it, they know a lot about. But if you're not, there are many questions and wonderings. So I appreciate you coming, and let's just start with why would someone choose homeschooling?
Well, there are probably about as many reasons for homeschooling as there are people who homeschool. Generally, I found that the reasons for homeschooling fall into three major categories. There are academic reasons, there are religious reasons, and there are social reasons.
All right. And you homeschool, is
Yes,
that
I do.
correct? And you have children,
I have two children.
and their ages.
I have a daughter who will be 10 in about a week, and I have a son who is 7.
And you have an education background.
Yes, I do. I have a bachelor's degree in education.
And when we talked before the show, you said that you had done some work with the Association of Homeschoolers.
There are actually 3 statewide organizations that serve homeschoolers, and I have worked with one of the organizations, OCHEC. OCHEC is Oklahoma Central Home Educators Association. It's based in Oklahoma City, but serves people around the state.
And as you did that, you decided to start on your own in a consulting way.
I found that people in the Norman area were not getting some good solid instruction on how to begin home education and how to go about that. And although there is a class up in northwest Oklahoma City, many people didn't want to go all the way up there. So I decided to start a class here to serve the needs in this area.
All right, let's talk about that. If a family were considering it and they came to you, what would you do?
First of all, I kind of talk with them for a while to determine what it is they want out of home education. If the child has been in public or private school, why do they want to move out of that format? That gives me a clue as to whether they might have unrealistic expectations about homeschooling. But it also helps me to give personalized information to them in how to get started. Then, if they've been in a public school, the child needs to be officially withdrawn from the school, so they're not considered truant. They need to write a letter to the school and explain that they're homeschooling. Then the parents are going to need to take some time to study all their options. There's a lot involved in home education, and one of the things I tell parents is don't rush into this. This may not be for you, so you better think about it long and hard before taking this on. First of all, parents need to write down a philosophy of education, and I do, in my class, I do a mini workshop on writing out a philosophy of education to get parents started on that. Of course, it's something that needs to be worked on for weeks or months even, but I get them started.
Let's talk about that just a second before you go on to the others. What kind of criteria do you suggest that they think about when they're beginning to write that philosophy?
I have them think about the reasons they have personally for wanting to homeschool, and I give them samples of real-life homeschooling families' philosophies, give them guidance on looking up how philosophies are written and ways to go about writing a philosophy. Some parents choose to take the public school system's philosophy and adapt it for their own. There are lots of ways to write one, but they need to include what it is they want, what goals they have for homeschooling, and their reasons for wanting to homeschool, and that helps to solidify their whole career in homeschooling.
Okay. And then you talk with them about a curriculum, is that correct?
There are lots of factors to consider when they're just looking at curricula and materials. And we talk about those factors that affect cost, the format of curriculum, learning styles, that sort of thing. And then I talk about the ways they can find out about curricula. And then I talk about places to actually buy curricula and materials.
So you don't promote one particular
No, I
curriculum?
don't.
All right. Once they kind of know what it's all about, then you talk to them about the amount of time during the day?
Oh, yes. That's one of the first things I cover, that if they're considering home education, they should be aware it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of energy, especially at the beginning, to sift through all of their options and to choose a curriculum and a set of materials and an approach that's going to work for them, for that student. But then on an ongoing basis, there's a lot of preparation that has to go on and a lot of time that has to be spent in that teacher-student interaction. Not as much as in a classroom setting, but there is still time involved.
Right. Being a teacher, whether you're in public school, private school, or homeschooling, you still have to plan and think and assess how the students do.
That's right. That's
not
right.
not an easy chore wherever you do
It
that.
is not an easy chore.
A question that I had is that what about physical education and musical experiences and those type of things that students get in the public school?
There are curriculum options that allow parents to actually teach their own children at home and those kind of things. Those are very popular to teach in groups. Many parents choose to do that in groups. Home education groups, local groups usually have those kind of activities. We have, here in Norman area, we have the band and orchestra. We have 2 different kinds of PE classes. We have field trips. We have science labs, science clubs, the spelling bee that's associated with the Daily Oklahoman Spelling Bee, art classes. Sometimes we've had drama productions too, so there are a lot of.
So through the organization, you'd know what time those things are offered, and
Yes.
you'd gather your children
Yes.
together at
When
that time.
people join a local home ed group, they usually receive the newsletter, and the newsletter lists all the activities that are going on.
And is that by grade? Those children?
Sometimes they are. It depends on what it is. One set of PE classes is 6th through 8th grade. 6 through 8-year-olds and 9 through 12-year-olds, and there are just different ways to group them.
Do you find that putting children by age specific is as important or not as important
As important as
it appears to be in the public schools, I
no,
guess?
it isn't. It just depends on the subject area.
Right. And that's more of a convenience, isn't it? And numbers of kids.
Yes.
That's kind of my feeling for sure. About cost?
Cost varies a lot with the type of format, how much parents want to teach, how much they're willing to put in themselves. They can usually decrease their cost if they're willing to do a lot of research at the library and prepare a lot of materials. I generally tell parents to expect to spend $200 to $300 per child per year.
What do the children say?
Oh, some children like it. Some children feel deprived for some reasons. Children are funny. I think it's wiser I think parents should listen to children and listen to their desires and what they're thinking, but I think parents should also discern what's behind the children's words and what it is they're really wanting, and parents should decide whether home education is right for them or not.
I would guess that they say the same thing our children say is, it's boring, we didn't do anything today, as well as, gee, that was great, and I like this.
That's true. We hear that.
Yeah, the very same thing. Well, if a parent was interested, how would they find you?
They can call me. My home number is 360-1900, and they have to remember that's my home number, and I may be busy with my children, but they may want to speak to the answering machine. They can call about my class. It's the only one that's available here in the Norman area. There is a class that's available through OCHEC, that's in Oklahoma City, and that's OCHEC. They can find that in the white pages. The library is a great resource for finding out about home education also. I have to give a plug for the library. It's the only system in the state that has access to the World Wide Web, and we have librarians who really want to serve home educators. There's a lot of information at the library and through the library. One of the things I do in my class is provide guidance to parents on accessing all that information at the library, but if parents want to spend a lot of time there, they can find that information eventually. And there are also people who'd be willing to sit down with parents at the library and just informally talk about home education. Also, I'm writing a workbook to help parents get started.
I would think visiting with other parents would be extremely important.
I think it is important. Parents, first of all, need to have the structure of a class, to have all this prepared information presented logically and in sequence, but then there's that personal touch too. They need to ask, well, like, how do you just start out? And, and what if you have a problem with this? You need a real-life homeschooling family to talk with.
Yeah, that's good. One of the things that I really appreciated when I was a principal at a grade school was that when parents were going to homeschool, and they had been in our school, is to come talk to me about it. and let me know why they were making that decision and that it was going to occur, because it allowed us to put some closure together and for me to issue my respect to them, so that there wasn't that uneasy feeling of, well, they're mad at us, which sometimes yes, but many times no, that it was a family decision. So I would really encourage families that are already in public schools that decide to homeschool to go visit with their principals.
I'd heartily endorse that.
And I know that you talked earlier about when you ask them why, and they say, well, I'm mad at some situation, that you encourage them to go back and try to resolve that first.
Running from a negative situation is not a good way to get started in home education. We should have a positive goal to move toward, and sometimes negative situations can propel us to make a positive choice, but just being mad at this teacher or this school or that principal is not a valid reason to get started in home education. There needs to be bigger forces at work.
It almost comes from inside of you.
Yes.
That it's a choice. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking your time and being with us today and giving us a lot more information about homeschooling. And good luck with your school.
Thank you.
And thank you all for joining us on Focus on Learning.
Thank you, Mrs. Barber. With all my talk about National Education Week, here's Mr. Rex Sua to tell you all about it.
Yes, our schools teach reading and writing and arithmetic, but they also teach the value of hard work and teamwork. They teach tomorrow's citizens that America is one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. They teach the American dream. The folks who teach your kids and staff your schools invite you to join them in celebrating the 75th anniversary of American Education Week. Visit your neighborhood school November 17th through the 23rd. America's future begins in her schools. A message from Channel 29 and the professional educators of Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Suba. Well, it seems that the majority of the nation felt that Bill Clinton's service deserved him another term, and they re-elected him. But Oklahomans believed that Republicans should have been in the White House and in Congress because they voted Republican all the way. So did the school mock elections. But that's all the time we have for this week's District Directions. For the absent Lawrence Bothwell, I'm Amanda Patterson. Good night.
Stay tuned for more from the super students of the Norman Public Schools here on the school channel Cable 29.